hello there.
Hey, everybody.
Hello there, friends, lovers. Oh my gosh, thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. Today is March 6th, 2022. I'm Robert Nasir. I'm here with Amy Nasir.
I'm Amy Nasir.
And I'm here with you, all of you good people. And hey, it's episode 104. 104, what does that mean? It's March 6th. First episode. The first episode of 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir was on, well, episode 1 was on March 8th. You would think 2 days from now is our anniversary, but we did do a preview episode the week before, so really this is it. This is the anniversary. 2 freaking years.
2 years.
We're punk rock. Okay, if you're watching a video, there's a reason why we have eschewed the usual outfit, and we're going punk rock. We got to talk about that.
Not quite punk rock, but you are.
No, well, you look awfully good.
Well, thank you.
And good is better than cool.
So that's over 700 days, 2 years.
It is. It is. Over 100 episodes, and many of you have been with us throughout the whole thing. Narendra, who has been a loyal fan of the show, is not only here, he's here live. You got to know, Narendra, he's on the other side of the globe. So
yeah.
it ain't 6 o'clock in the evening for him. It's way, way early in the morning. Thank you for being there. Linda Cordair is on with the champagne glasses because she is the connoisseur of all things champagne and wine, but of course all things art, Cordair.com.
And Marius is on YouTube.
Marius is on the chat in the YouTube.
Hi,
all
Marius.
right. Excellent. I'm just going to refresh my screen here. I want to make sure I don't miss any chats today because this is going to be fun. Oh, excellent. Looking good, looking good. All of the platforms are behaving themselves. Good. Because, you know, surprises sometimes. Zuck will let us down or whatnot. There it is. There it is. All right, good. Today is Sunday, March 6th, 2022. I'm going to do the preliminaries quick. I'm going to do everything quick. Last week we ran, what, an hour and 20 minutes, which, if you know math, is longer than 5 minutes. So we're going to try to be a little bit tighter this week. It is March 6th, the 65th day of the year. Now, being that there's 365 days in a year, you have 300 days left to make this 2022 your best year yet. I am working my associates off trying to make 2022 outstanding. We did some of that last night, and we're going to talk about it because, oh man, did we have a good time. 294 days left until Christmas, 239 days until Halloween. It's still early, but you know, we start talking about Halloween pretty early on 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and Amy Nasir, who, of course, Halloween being her favorite holiday. But 8 days left until White Day, 38 days left until Black Day. Remember, these are the alternate Valentine's Day, and on 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, Valentine's isn't a day, it's a season. So when we discovered there is White Day, the day in which men pay back those Valentines they got from the ladies on Valentine's Day back on February 14th, long story short, in South Korea, they do it again a month later. You've got 2 more chances. 2 more chances to celebrate Valentine's Day. White Day is on March 14th in just 8 days. Black Day in South Korea, but hell, it should be worldwide, is in 38 days on April what? April 14th.
Yeah, April 14th.
And wouldn't you rather celebrate a third Valentine's Day on April 14th than what comes on April 15th? Well, those of you who are in the United States, in the colonies, because of course that's tax day. Now on the bright side, if you're in southeast Michigan, it's also traditionally the day that Greenfield Village opens at the Henry Ford. Yes, and we're going to be talking about that in a couple of weeks as well. On this date, March 6th, first of all, Bayer invented aspirin. They figured out if you take the bark off of a certain plant.
I think the Native Americans knew that beforehand, but I know that
that's true. They probably
they
stole
commercialized it, which was great.
But they were Germans. I mean, how would they have got the idea from Native Americans? And, of course, if the Indians were already doing that, it's kind of rude, because what did Bayer do? I don't know. Adam Mossoff would appreciate this, but they patented it, sure enough.
Yay.
And there's a link to the whole story I'm not going to read, because also on this date, we celebrate Michelangelo's birth date. Michelangelo, who, of course, painted the Sistine Chapel, including the creation of Adam.
Wait, wasn't he a turtle who ate pizza?
That, too. Yes. Not just the painter of the Sistine... Well, this is the great thing. He painted the Sistine Chapel, but he also sculpted the David and the Pietà.
Ooh, yes.
And he was an architect. I mean, he wasn't just like one thing. He was a Renaissance man. And, of course, this is the beginning of the Renaissance period, the early Renaissance. And people like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, I mean, it's just people that remind us, you don't just have to be one thing. You could reinvent yourself if you had the courage and the confidence, and we're talking about courage and confidence today. Also born on this date, speaking of courage and confidence, Cyrano de Bergerac.
Yes.
Now, not everybody knows that the great play by Edmond Rostand, one of the best, maybe the best play in world literature, and a great movie, 1950 version with Jose Ferrer, it was not entirely fictional. The inspiration for the play Cyrano de Bergerac was Cyrano de Bergerac, and he was born on this date. There really, and link in the show notes because it's kind of interesting to read. Oh my gosh, there really was a guy, and yes, he did have an unusual visage, a large nose, and there may be reasons why. But the story in the play is fictionalized, but the character was real. A man of enormous nobility and courage, but also joie de vivre, the panache that he talks about in the play. Good stuff. Look that up.
Yeah, Scott the chat on Facebook said, did he actually have a long nose?
He did have a big nose. Now, I don't know if it was long. I don't know.
Perhaps a Roman nose.
Yes. Well, some noses are bigger than others. Some men are endowed in different ways. And I have not actually seen if there is a picture of him. Obviously, there aren't photographs, but there may be paintings, drawings. I do know that his nose was large enough that it did inspire the story. Also born on this date.
Before you go, I really want to, next time, next Sunday, I think,
yes.
I'm going to go ahead and ornament Robert's hat with a white plume of freedom.
Are we?
Yes. I can get one of my beautiful white ostrich feathers out and attach it to your hat.
I would not be so bold, but if you think that I am meritorious of such an adornment, I will leave that to you.
I do.
Then I will trust your judgment. I always trust your judgment when you're saying nice things about me. It's also the birth date of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Now, we've talked about Elizabeth Barrett Browning before, and damn, we're going to talk about her again because, of course, the great poet. But not just that, because she was one of the most famous poets of the Victorian era. And she married, of course, where she got her name from, Robert Browning, the other great poet. And we've talked before about how historically marriage was not always a matter of romance. And not just that marriages were arranged, but they had to do with estates and dowries and on higher levels of dukedoms and earldoms and kingdoms. And the point is, we talk about marriage now, we talk about romance, we talk about love. And people will say, well, back in the Victorian era, there were all these other considerations. And what I love about Elizabeth Barrett Browning was precisely that she married Robert Browning against the standards of her culture and against her father's wishes.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know this.
And moved away to Italy in order to live because they married for love. Yes.
Scandalous.
It's amazing that could happen. 1845, Barrett Browning met fellow poet Robert Browning, and they courted in secret until their marriage in 1846 against her father's wishes. Poor gal. But that's why in the Victorian era, where again, romance and marriage were often had to do with society and social conventions and power and things, that's how you can get a woman who writes, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death." Elizabeth Barrett Browning, happy birthday today. And finally, one more birthday. Amy will be scandalized when I say this, but I know, Mark, you're listening out there, and I've got to say, today is David Gilmour's birthday. Happy birthday. What I love about saying this is the one where you noticed I didn't say birth date, I said birthday, because he's still with us. I love being able to say happy birthday to people who are still metaphysically with us and not metaphysically
I'm sure
challenged.
he's a nice person, even though
And
I don't like Pink Floyd music.
Amy does not like Pink Floyd. But, Mr. Gilmour,
I'm sorry.
CBE, I don't know if he's one of the 2 high-level CBEs where we call him Sir Gilmour, but he has been honored by the British Crown. Happy birthday to David Gilmour, 76 years old and still rocking out. So very, very cool.
Oh, and Scott on Facebook in the chat, he says that about the Brownings.
Yes.
There's a great classic movie, I guess, the Barretts, not the Brownings, but the Barretts of Wimpole Street.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
I have not. It's on my to-do list.
Well, we should watch that for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Also in 2001, on this date, half of you will hate me for this. But Amy won't be one of them this time.
Okay.
2001, the beginning of the end of Napster.
Oh, okay, good. Yes. Goodbye,
the death
Napster.
spiral of Napster. In the year 2000, a new company called Napster created something of a music fan's utopia, a world in which nearly every song ever recorded instantly available on your home computer and for free.
It's not for free. It's to the detriment of musicians because you're ruining their lives if you're taking money. If you're taking songs from them without paying them for it, they need to be paid.
Well,
okay.
It's been said that anything free is worth what you paid for it. So yeah, if you got some value, it came from somewhere and not from where it should. I'm not going to read you the whole short article I've got on Napster, but
yeah, as a musician, I can tell you I earned my $13 at that one gig that we played.
That's right, yeah. And I earned that .07 cents that we get from Spotify every month for our album. True Tales of Dereliction by Ron Toole and the Capitalists. Yes. You could look it up if you have that kind of self-loathing. But no. It was a good album. It was great fun to put that record together.
It was.
I don't actually know what the royalties are like on that, because it's our cellist and banjo player. I know that sounds funny, but that was his role in the band. He played classical guitar, cello, and banjo. And he's the one who filed our copyright. So he's the one who actually gets all the money from Spotify and whoever else is giving us money. But given that it wasn't really a big hit, I don't know if that really amounts to anything. So yeah, that date. It's just interesting to me that 2001... I mean, that was the internet even that much of a thing? I think 2001, GeoCities and LiveJournal and other things that are not out there anymore or are, but like MySpace are a whole different thing now. And Napster is still out there now, but it's a legitimate music service. They originally joined with Rhapsody, which we used to be subscribed to, and now there's another company running both of those. Anyway, 2001, we're like, oh, that's just a couple years ago. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. It's date math again. That's actually 21 years ago. Was the internet a thing 21 years ago? So
I'm getting some disappointment. People are disappointed in me on the YouTube
for not being
chat.
a Pink Floyd fan.
Yes,
I've got to bring the chat up here because I'm missing out.
But Jim on Facebook, he's giving me some moral support.
Oh,
so
good.
Thank you,
well,
Jim.
To be fair, Pink Floyd can be really, really, really depressing, and not just depressing because that was the obvious word, you knew that was coming, but melancholy. I mean, that music can put you in a state for the rest of the day, but when that's what you want or need, or when you're working through your own insights about mortality and sanity, and
you know what, I like that. If I'm really depressed, I listen to the Delta Blues, and that's really the way to go. Because I mean, you got Robert Johnson, you've got you've got such wonderful Delta Blues musicians out there who will, you can commiserate with them, and it just feels good. It's nice and cathartic.
You're right. They've been to those places, and they'll help you through them.
Yeah,
but they just don't seem quite modern enough to really get the feel.
But the thing I love a good. For instance, I love The Cure. I put in on the YouTube chat. There's a lot of morose music I really like a lot. I really like a lot of very disturbingly depressing music. But I have to trust who's doing it. I have to trust them. I have to know them and trust them.
It's interesting that...
And that I need to know and trust that they're going to guide me into a better place. Like Robert Johnson, the Delta Blues.
But the Cure never takes you to a better place.
Not always. Some of the songs... I should say this. I'm selective about the Cure. I don't like every song of theirs. But, when I get a song and I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah... I hear you, Robert Smith. I hear you. I hear you. Yep. My soul cries out.
Yeah. Well, Marius says, I don't know if I can watch you anymore. No Pink Floyd. Believe me, I could go through Dark Side of the Moon from the sound effects at the beginning to there is no Dark Side of the Moon, really. In fact, it's all dark. I could take you through it all and play acoustic guitar along with it badly, but I know the whole album by heart, so... At least from one of us, you will get your...
Oh, Marius is trying to convince me on the YouTube. He says, it's not about being morose. My goodness.
Right.
What about the intricacy, the rhythmic layers of psychedelic rock, and you can listen to The Cure?
The only thing I can recommend is if you like Pink Floyd, and you don't understand why anybody wouldn't, try listening to music from the years 2000 to 2010. And you'll be like... Yeah, I don't know, I get it, there were a few good songs, but those people really didn't do anything any good like the 70s, or like the 80s, or like the 90s, or whatever, the best music ever made, the guys who really understood, the guys who really got it, was whoever was around when you were 14 years old. And that's the way that it works. And by the time you were 20, most people were done growing in their musical, and you may have picked up other things, bits of classical music, or bits of pop from this decade or that decade. Most of us are, and as a musician, I like to think that I'm broader than that, because I love oldies, which to me doesn't mean what they call oldies now, which is the 70s. I mean the 1950s. I mean the beginning of rock and roll. I like the 60s, and not just surf, but psychedelic, and it was really the beginnings of progressive rock. I like the 70s, which to me was the golden age of hard rock music, not metal, hard rock. And I like the 80s, because the 80s was the best decade ever, the decade of optimism. I could go on. You get the idea. I like a little of everything, but face it, most of us we heavily favor the music we discovered as teenagers.
That's true. And on YouTube in the chat, Jeff says, Pink Floyd is ancient like us, Robert.
Oh, good. I feel much better now. Thank you.
Enric confirms this by saying Pink Floyd started doing albums around 1968.
This is true. And even though it's David Gilmour's birthday, he wasn't around then. Unfortunately, Syd Barrett started the band and then kind of went a little crazy, well, more than a little crazy, a few years in, and David Gilmour joined up to help them get through that, and he ended up being Syd Barrett's replacement. Yeah,
Syd Barrett, I'm actually a little bit more familiar with.
He did end up making a solo, he might have done 2 solo albums. He did, after he got himself a little bit together, did keep creating music.
When did he pass away?
I think we lost him recently.
Okay.
But I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
Or maybe somebody in the chat will look that up. I'll bet they will.
Maybe
somebody in the chat will look that up for us. Yes, so what are we listening to this week? Well, this is fun.
I listened to something depressing by Barry Weiss.
What did you listen to?
I just don't even want to talk about it. It's so depressing.
Oh, her podcast, Honestly, in which she discusses the challenges of transgenderism in athletics.
In women's sports.
We'll leave that to you.
Super depressing.
Look up, well, don't. Okay.
Sorry.
Forget it. I have nothing to say then. It's okay. What Amy's listening to this week was super depressing. And hey, what do we listen to Pink Floyd for? It was catharsis. So somehow I could tie those two together, but I have no desire to do that. What else I've been listening? Well, one of the things I'm listening to, and I've done this before, and it's kind of rude, or maybe it's narcissistic, or maybe it's just really cool, but I really enjoyed our Friday discussion with James Stevens.
Oh my gosh, the analytic synthetic dichotomy.
We had the greatest time talking about this philosophic essay, which, if you've never heard it and you don't know what it's about, you're like, is that even a thing, and why would I care? But it explains so much of what happened in culture
Yeah.
Everywhere, really, from the late 1800s to now.
Well, even before then, I mean, it started with Plato, really. I mean, and Kant came along, and other dumpy ass philosophers, excuse me, came along,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
they're like, here, let me confuse everybody some more and gaslight everybody, and
You're using the technical terms like dumpy ass.
yeah, very technical, and it is so. I mean, so actually, you and I, we came up with a really excellent example of this, and it's about sex. Sex.
What did we say about sex?
So the analytic synthetic. Okay, so let me just summarize it real quick, and I may be totally wrong. Let me know. Analytic truth basically means what they consider to be very, very logical. This is like the Platonic forms. These are like this is like the true truth, true truth, sort of intrinsic truth. And then you've got, over on the other side of the world, you've got the synthetic facts, which are not quite facts because they're, what's the word, contingent. They're contingent. They may not be right. They may, like the number one may actually not be one exactly, when you're measuring it out with a...
Well, one is always
1 inch.
one, but 1 cup of water might not be the same as 1 cup of flour.
Oh,
So
yes.
one doesn't mean this. When it's reality,
When it's reality, it's subjective, basically.
well, I think
You got
what
intrinsicism and subjectivism.
I think most people understand this as consider math, pure mathematics. It doesn't depend on anything out there in the world. It's just 2 and 2 is always going to be 4 because we made it that way. We decided, or we somehow intuited it from the Platonic realm. But one way or another, some things are just true in and of themselves. You've heard of a priori truths. They're true even before you look at reality. And then there are other truths that are like, well, I know that because I'm street smart, because I looked out there and I saw, but there's nothing inherent in that. It didn't have to be true. It's like Disney metaphysics. If I can imagine it another way, then another way is possible just by virtue of the fact that I can imagine it. We had a whole discussion about that. We spent an hour talking to James Valiant, coolest
so
guy in
good.
philosophy.
Oh my gosh.
Good time. Link is in the show notes. You can watch that afterward if you haven't already. I know some folks already have. In fact, it got a lot of views.
Yeah.
It got more views than our regular Thursday show, which we also did on the Ayn Rand Center UK channel. And that's okay, because we're on both. So you get a big dose of both of us
You get
either way.
double trouble
So
every
yes,
Thursday and Friday.
that's real high up on my
Yeah,
what have I been listening
but
to
going
list.
back to the example that we came up with, talked about sex and the idea of that, like you think of sex and you think of all all throughout human history, you've got people talking about, virginity as some sort of like analytic higher truth. This is something that's it's almost like an axiom. and you have things, like, because the question is, what is sex? Go back to the Clinton years, and
I
he's
did not
like,
have
well,
sex with that woman.
sex with it, because the sex that I had with her was a synthetic fact and very contingent, and we're not even entirely sure if it really
depends
is sex.
on what the meaning of the word is.
And so,
Are you having sex with that woman? No, I am not having sex with that woman.
So,
I mean, not right now.
So,
not at the moment.
I thought, well, what is the analytic truth that the Kant and Hegel and all these bozos would actually consider? The missionary position. Now that is the analytic truth. That is the form, the Platonic form. Because that is really truly sex. Everything else is, depends on what is. But really, I mean, you think about it in terms of pragmatism, you think about it in terms of politics, you think about it in terms of economics. You have a lot of these this barrier between what people's principles are and what their supposed facts are that may or may not be true, and all that good stuff. So anyway, there you go. Sex. What is sex?
All right. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on the missionary position. I thought the position of most missionaries was don't have sex. I guess if you're going to have sex, there's one acceptable way. It's funny because we laugh about it, we joke about it, but it's hard to even remember where that expression, the missionary position, came from, except there used to be people, and the crazy thing is you still run into them, who have that attitude about sexuality that anything other than the missionary position, that one obvious simple and pro-procreation, since that's what sex is for, position, everything else is bad or nasty or kinky or something. Anyway, without getting any more into that, until we have an episode on the subject, which we absolutely need to have. I was talking to Amy, and
Yes.
I told her, Amy,
Yes, Robert.
I need to reread a few of the written remarks that I had presented previously on the show. Because this is our 2-year anniversary.
Yay!
And we could do a, greatest hits recap, and then we can do those 60-second clips we talked about. And she said, well, that's good, but I have a topic idea. I'd like to talk about. I said, oh, what would you like to talk about? She said, I'd like to talk about bravery. And I thought, we did that. So I did the research. And I look back, and I'm like, wait a minute, we never did a show called Bravery? No, we never did a show called, we talked about courage, right? Well, we touched on that on both series, Life on Earth on Thursdays and 5 Minutes on Sundays. It turns out the episode on which we talked about courage and confidence, I guess some of you aren't watching on video, episode number 1, the very first episode. The title, the topic was benevolence, but we talked courage, we talked confidence, and their relationship to the virtue of integrity, which is responsible for much of the benevolence that you see around us. So my first question for you, my big question for you, because so many, really, people are laughing about missionary sex. I love that. I mean, I love there's nothing wrong with missionary sex. It's a great starting point. No, it's a great thing. As long as somebody doesn't come along and say, yeah, and you should only do that. So, nothing against the missionary advocates. So,
Yeah, especially during Lent.
especially during Lent. No. What are you talking? I'm giving up abstinence for Lent. I can't give up something I wasn't doing. Anyway, bravery. Back to bravery.
Yes,
okay?
bravery. All right.
You need more bravery in sex. No. I just can't get off this topic. It's hard to get off this topic.
Keep it going.
Keep it going. Bravery. What I want to know as we get into the topic of courage and confidence is, and you can share this in the chat, because I'm trying to keep one eye on it, but it's just too hilarious. I'll work on that. Well, I'll let Amy do some talking, and then I'll catch up. Bravery. Bravery moments. Courage moments. What pops to mind? Do you have one you can share with the group? Share one in the chat. When did you find you had to be brave? When you had to do something where the courage required didn't come naturally and you had to steel your resolve. S-T-E-E-L, or maybe you stole your resolve, but you had to use your greatest resolve. You had to use the courage of your convictions because on the emotional level, you weren't feeling it. Would love to know if anybody has any bravery stories you would like to share in the chat. Of course, Linda Cordair is in the chat. She's got the bravery story.
Yes, she does.
When early in the COVID process, they shut down California, and they shut down all the restaurants, and they shut down everything. And a few things started opening back up, and the government said, well, these people are essential, so we'll let them do part of what they have to do. And you all know this story. The folks at Quent Cordair Fine Art, Linda and Quent Cordair, at one point just said, look, we know what needs to be done with masks and sanitizer and all the stuff that you've told us to do, and we figured out for ourselves what makes sense. We're opening the gallery back up. And, the law, the officials, all the, I don't even know if they count as laws or regulations or whatever it was, all that stuff that they did, said, no, you can't do that. And they said, well, this makes no sense. We've got to open our business. We've got to do business. People have to be able to do business. And they were, they had all the social distancing and the mask and the sanitizer, everything that, and nobody was forced to walk into the gallery. But at the same time, it was like, they're going to get sued. They're going to put out of business forever. And they're like, no, we got to take that chance. We've got to have the courage to do. Anyway, don't mean to get too much into that, but it's just funny to ask, has anybody in the chat got stories of bravery? I want to hear them. And then look, and Linda's here, of course. She's got the ultimate story of bravery. But yes, please share your stories of courage and confidence, your stories of when you had to rise to that challenge.
Scott says, I had to tell other objectivists I was working with
TAS.
the Atlas Society.
The Atlas Society. The Objectivist Society.
Everyone's on their own journey.
The IOS. I pick on them a lot for all the different names that they've had, but at least they've stuck with the Atlas Society for a while. I've got to at least give them credit for that.
They have.
Yeah.
Yep. And,
what are they called this week? Well, okay.
Yeah, Brian sang to a large audience in camp when he was 15.
Yes.
So that takes a lot of courage. As a matter of fact, last night.
Yes, well, this is why this came up.
Yes, we witnessed some major balls going on.
Major balls.
Major balls.
Testicular fortitude. We went to the Corktown Music Festival.
Yeah, it's basically an Irish area in Detroit.
So every year,
nice area.
They hold this festival, and a few of the different bars and clubs with live music, they all participate in this. So like you get a wristband, you can walk in any one of these places and watch bands. We spent most of our time in PJ's Lager House, if you know this small club, just outside downtown. It's in Detroit, but just outside the downtown area. 2 different stages, 8 bands per stage, and they went back and forth, so bands had time to set up. And then with the 3 other clubs involved, there were 70 bands playing that night. And this festival is kind of a big deal. People walk into these small clubs, and they're jammed in there. They're jam-packed. And it's small groups, local groups. These are not, you're not seeing, big names. And some of these folks were weird.
They were freaky
unusual.
deaky. They were letting their freak flag fly. Like totally letting their freak flag fly. Letting their goth flag fly. Letting their vampire flag fly. It was great.
What became apparent, she's not joking about the vampire thing. If you saw my Facebook post last night, you know what she's talking about. What became apparent was, whatever you thought about, for example, the slightly morose-looking vampire-witch combination, they had a certain amount of bravery. Or as Amy said, they had balls.
They had super balls.
It was a guy and a gal, but I think she had bigger balls than he did. Just the courage to go up there and do what they did. To do the total goth, emo, death, white, death face and...
Oh, and the guy was wearing makeup. He was wearing this kind of a bright reddish pink eyeshadow, and and the mascara and the eyeliner and I don't think it had anything to do with his eyebrows, but he had the white. They both had the white face makeup to make themselves look extra pasty, and it was great. And they both had like long black hair and. Oh my gosh. Oh, and the woman, she was wearing a wedding dress that had blood all over it like she stabbed herself. It was great. No, I'm kidding. But no, it was actually very, very goth. And the guy was wearing, God, he had so much bravery to go up there, because you could tell that they were both very navel-gazy people. And when the lady would, between songs, she would talk to the audience and say what she was playing next. She played bass and he played guitar, and they had a drum track, which was kind of bad. But she talked like she was just some sort of librarian that you'd like, nice, sweet lady librarian. And they were both such navel gazers. But you could tell it took a lot of courage for them to be up there. Because some people in the audience, they were like, it was like in the scene from The Wedding Singer, when the Boy George impersonator came up and started doing the song "Do You Really Want to Hurt Me?" and everybody was like, "You suck," because he kept doing it over and over again. That's the only song he knew. So it was almost like that, but not quite. So everyone was quite polite. Nobody said "you suck" or anything like that. But they really put their heart out into it, and it was repetitive goth that I didn't quite appreciate. But I'm like, good for them.
Well, the music wasn't always great. In fact, the best band of the night, the music wasn't the best, but the performance was amazing. So there's so much more to it than just, is this a band whose album you would buy? There's a quirky street band there.
Yeah. Goes
by the name Caveman and Bam Bam. And it's this old, kind of overweight dude, gray hair, messy gray hair.
Yeah.
Wears black across his eyes, just heavy makeup. Wears an open vest with no shirt. Plays guitar. He's not attractive. He's the opposite of attractive.
Okay, all right. I'll just say two words.
And it's a two...
Man boob.
Man boobs and a belly. His drummer plays a little tiny drum kit. Regular snare, but a little 16-inch tom as a bass drum. Little kit. Like a toy kit, like Bam Bam and the Flintstones would play. And these guys are balls to the wall, amazing energy. The drummer has chops you would not believe.
Yeah.
And they just go all out, and yet at the same time, it's the kind of act where if like Ayn Rand had seen it, it would be all she would need to say, there's nothing valid about rock music. It really is just tribal, horrible, primitive, but that's their shtick. But it was also
very, very funny. It's very, very, very funny.
But the energy and the talent was amazing.
Yes, it was.
And yet it wasn't nihilistic. It was just a little silly.
Yes.
It was very cool. And again,
it was really fun.
Yeah.
And the audience they're jumping up and down, everything, and it was just great.
Yes.
So we saw a lot of Bravery, and we saw a lot of Bravery from the other bands too.
Yes.
You know, some of the other bands they had a lot of potential, and you know, and some of them were just, you know, not quite right, and some of them weren't, you know,
totally amateur. Lots of room for criticism, but that's the whole point. Yeah. And I'm sure all of them knew it.
Right.
But they went up there and they did their thing, and it reminded Amy and I, God, we got to get out there and play music in public again.
Yeah.
You know, we play music at home, but we need to get out there. We need to get out there and do that.
Yeah. But anyway, my point of this whole thing is that if you go out there and you embarrass yourself, like, you know, but you own it. You go out there and you know, you may look like you're nervous as hell, but you still do it and you get through it.
That's right.
That is an inspiration to me. And I think it should be an inspiration to more people, and people shouldn't be shying away. I know it's embarrassing, but you know, you should be embracing the embarrassment sometimes, you know.
Bring it on. Should. That's why I tell you to stand on the tables. Yep. In fact, the show notes has a link to me, my most recent standing on the table at Ocon last time. Right. Get up on the table. Yes, everybody in the room will look at you, but that's what you want. Not because you want everybody to look at you, but you need to break through. Every now and then, you've got to break that mold. Go to the chat real quick here, because Narendra put in his entry, he said, greatest courage moment was when I openly broke apart from my own friends in schooling for a full embrace of knowledge and really teaching kids concepts I became alone. Independence, especially in school days, God, independence is crucial, but it's not easy. And yes, it takes bravery. Jeff asks, is it brave to admit men think about sex 19 times a day, which is twice as much as women? Now, the important thing to know about that statistic, which I'm sure was pulled out of one of those orifices people use for those activities, is that statistics are statistics. There are men out there that rarely think about such things, and women who think about such things 19 times a day. Trust me on this. So it's all about the individual. That's all that matters. Yes. Rob says, my favorite personal attribute is grit, which is a type of bravery that allows people to not only weather adversity, but thrive from it. Absolutely true. Glad you brought it up, because we did an episode on grit.
We did.
Defined by Angela Duckworth, the gal who wrote the book on the subject. Angela Duckworth defines it as passion and perseverance. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. Perseverance is tough. God, we found that out this winter because we got comfortable. The worst thing you can do when you're trying to achieve great things is get really comfortable. But it was that kind of winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Seamus says... bravery reminds him of doing karaoke at TosCon.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, if you come to Ocon in Washington, D.C. in July, we're going to be there, and we may actually bring our surgical strike karaoke. Probably.
We brought it to Texas, and there we had to bring it on an airplane.
Yes,
This time we'll probably drive down some.
Yeah, we're probably going to drive over, bring
Who knows? We might even bring musical instruments again.
Yeah, we might actually have room for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll see that in the hallways, last Well, last year in Austin, yeah, we just set it up a couple times in, some hallway somewhere, and just people came.
We just set it up a couple times.
And
we had the whole entryway of the second building.
Yes.
And everybody, 50 people just sitting around or singing or hanging out. And then the second one, we took the entire lobby of the main lecture area and turned it into a karaoke area. So yes, it was
Rucka even did
cool.
I think Rucka even did a
Oh yeah,
an
Rucka
Eminem
was
song.
there.
I think it was Eminem.
And it's funny because he
did a great job.
He did half the song in his satirical style, but he did half of it straight.
Yes.
As if to show, look, I'm funnier than anybody else in the room, but also I got chops, and he does. It was very cool.
He does have chops. Yes, and everybody embraced embarrassment. Everybody was super kind to each other. It was really lovely, super lovely.
Yes. So since Rob gave me the chance to mention grit, definition being our definition, the working definition from Angela Duckworth, passion and perseverance, I have to take a moment to say, speaking of courage and confidence, I love the quote from Ayn Rand. Courage and confidence are practical necessities. Courage is the practical form of being true to existence, of being true to truth, and confidence is the practical form of being true to one's own consciousness. By itself, you can pull that out of the lexicon. It sounds a little floating, so I had to go back to Galt's speech from the book Atlas Shrugged and get the full quote, which I will now read for your edification. Just takes a moment, but totally worth it. Because this is the short paragraph on integrity. Integrity is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake your consciousness, just as honesty is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake existence. That man is an indivisible entity, an integrated unit of two attributes, of matter and consciousness, and that he may permit no breach between body and mind, between action and thought, between his life and his convictions. That, like a judge, impervious to public opinion, he may not sacrifice his convictions to the wishes of others, be it the whole of mankind shouting pleas or threats against him. That courage and confidence are practical necessities. That courage is the practical form of being true to existence, of being true to truth. And confidence is the practical form of being true to one's own consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's fun because I looked up dictionary definitions, went to the Collins Dictionary. Courage is the attitude of facing and dealing with anything recognized as dangerous, difficult, or painful instead of withdrawing from it. I like that. And then they go on. The quality of being fearless. No. So then I had to go to Robert Heinlein, a quote I've mentioned before, because Robert Heinlein says, courage is the complement of fear. A man who is fearless cannot be courageous. He is also a fool. It's not about not being fearful. And most of us know that. When we say we're fearless, we don't really mean we're fearless. What we mean is that we are able and willing to overcome our fears. That is courage. Mark Twain said something similar. He said, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear. Mm-hmm. Mark Twain. And applying this to what we saw last night, I love these people rocking out. Even when they weren't, and they knew they weren't the best band in the bar. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin said, it takes courage to make a fool of yourself.
Yes.
Well, he was one of the world's great fools and one of the great talents, and he would know it takes courage to make a fool of yourself.
One of my very favorite courage stories and embarrassment stories. I'll say this. It's mainly a courage story, but so last year in Ocon and Austin, somehow we pulled this off. Somehow, not only did we do Surgical Strike karaoke twice, but we also were in the Ocon's Got Talent show.
Oh, the talent show, yes.
And oh my gosh, that was absolutely.
Yes. Did that take courage?
That took so much courage
from
both of us. And and it was so nerve-wracking. But we ended up coming and we actually shared
we
second.
Tied for third place.
Yes, we tied for third place, and it was absolutely wonderful. And
Yeah, I've got to get that posted online.
yeah, we
You know,
actually have that now.
Last week, Jim asked me about when are you going to put up your musical performances where we can find them. And I said, well, there's a bunch of them out there. He said, yeah, I can't find them. I don't know. I haven't come across them. So I put up a post on Facebook with links to all of my just goofy amateur stuff and a link to our record albums if you want to hear what I did when I was in the band.
Yeah.
We were in the band.
Yeah.
Amy, the bass player, me, the on electric guitar.
Lead guitarist.
And it was really a strange, because anyway, it was a strange combination because the lead singer was on acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
I was on electric guitar. And the other guitar player played some Spanish guitar, banjo, cello.
Yeah.
So, anyway, point is, per Jim's request, I did put up a post with that, but the one thing I didn't include was a link to our Ocon performance.
Yes.
And the folks at Ocon, the folks at ARI, recently released those files, so it's not a copyright issue. I need to get them uploaded. We will do that this week.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it was such a night of courage at Ocon last year. There were so many performers.
It was great to see people come up and do their thing.
Especially, I was very impressed with the gentleman that we shared the third place prize with, which who is Mike Dart, who is
probably should have come in first place.
He should have come in first place. He did this amazing tribal fusion belly dance, and now he's a gentleman. And you would think, well, gentlemen shouldn't be belly dancers. No, they should.
Well, if they can do it like Mike Dart does.
If he can do it like Mike Dart does. Oh my gosh. Anyway, That was fantastic. So
yep. If you want to reach out to Mike, last name has 2 T's. Mike, D-A-R-T-T. Hell of a guy and just amazing. An amazing talent, an amazing body, and he knows what to do with it. Just extraordinary. In all the ways you can imagine, it was just extraordinary. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat because I know that there's so much more to do in here. And things... Sorry, there's funny stuff too that I just... Yes. Jim writes, the bravest thing I've ever had to do was also the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Taking my dog Sammy to the vet, to be euthanized. And
I know that.
Being with him through the whole procedure.
It is.
The worst day of my life.
The worst.
Worse than the days when a woman left me some years ago. And when North Korea pointed missiles at the Marine camp I was at in the DMZ for 5 scary minutes. Being the agent of my dog's death was terrible, though I knew I had to do it to free him from his suffering. You know, I mentioned that Heinlein quote. Heinlein also says that when the time comes, you've got to be prepared to put down your own, I forget if he said dog or some other animal. And that you're doing the dog no kindness by farming it out to others.
Yeah, it's okay, Jim. He says, I didn't mean that to be a downer.
No, it's one of the things I absolutely agree with, that pet owner, and I know it's hard, and I understand some people have a psychology where it's just impossible for them to be in the room. And I don't agree with Heinlein that you should literally do that yourself. I think it's obviously there are people who can make that more painful and humane than I can, but I need to be there with the animal. I need to be there.
I mean, your courage in that way, will vary, of course, depending on the individual. But I know that is truly, you're absolutely right. It's truly one of the hardest things ever.
Yes. I
mean, even more so than, because we've been at our friends and families, like when, anyway, it's a long story, but we've been through a lot of cancer and people dying from cancer, and we were there, when they passed away and everything. It's a little bit different. An animal can't tell you anything. They can't speak to you. They can't tell you how they're doing. They can't say anything except for you what you already know, that they do love you, that you love them, and that's all there is.
Yeah.
There is no conceptual reminiscing with a pet, and that can be really tough. Really, really tough.
It's tough. It's tough in a lot of ways. And you've got to be the one to decide when it's time.
Yes.
When enough is enough and the pain isn't giving quality of life, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes. And you say don't want to be a downer, but really, it's an important topic, and I'm glad it came up.
Yes.
And bravery is always going, well, not always, bravery is often going to be addressing and standing up for difficult topics. So, glad that you mentioned that. Petya mentions the bravest thing I have ever done is immigrate to the U.S. with almost no money, $30, no English, no friends, and not telling my parents either at 25. That's extraordinary, Petya. That is really extraordinary. And when I hear stories like that, I think, man, I haven't done anything that hard.
Right. Right.
That's been so easy. I've lived in Southeast Michigan my whole life. So we're running a little bit long, and I'm hoping to wrap up by the top of the hour. So there's a few things I have to talk about. First of all, one question that comes up when we discuss bravery, whenever we have these conversations about confidence and courage, is what about fake it till you make it? And my answer to that is I think there are better ways of saying that.
Yeah, there are better ways, because you know
and
what?
not just saying it, but thinking about it.
Yeah.
So here's, I'm going to hold this up just for long enough that nobody can capture it. Well, of course, if I hold it up at all, you can just pause YouTube later and capture it. I have a Post-it note that says, fake it till you make it, but I'm not going to let you capture me holding that up because that would be bad. I don't like fake it till you make it.
Right.
Here's what I like, and I will hold this one up, my Post-it note for the week. It says, what would you do if you were confident?
Aha.
Do that.
Very good.
That's a short version of what I've said before. I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what to do. Okay, I understand you have no idea what to do, but what would you do if you did know what to do? Okay, logical contradiction. I don't know what to do. What do you mean, what would I do if I knew what to do? But just asking that question in that way is often a great way to brainstorm. I have no idea what to do next, but what would I do if I did know what to do?
You're basically calling up parts of your own experience and your own knowledge in life to visually guide yourself through the scenario, and you can see yourself doing it, and then you can call up what you know you have.
Yeah. Another way of asking is, okay, I don't know what to do, but imagine some guy who did know what to do. What would I tell him? I lay that down just to make the point that you can apply that to confidence, courage, bravery. I'm not brave right now. I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm embarrassed, whatever the particular thing is. I don't want to go out on stage, or I don't want to start my podcast. I don't feel confident in front of a microphone. What would I be doing? I'm not trying to fake myself or convince myself, but just if I was confident, what would that look like? What would I be doing in that moment? Okay, well, I'm not confident, but I know what that would look like, so I can go ahead and do that anyway. So that's why my Post-it note for the week says, well, what would you do if you were confident? Do that. So there's my Post-it note for the week. That will be up on my bathroom mirror this week, something I already know, but something I need to remind myself of every now and then, and if that's useful to you, write it on a Post-it note. Stick it up on your bathroom mirror and apply that. Yeah.
Linda says confidence is super sexy.
Confidence is incredibly sexy. There are two attributes that are just the maximum sex appeal. Neither one of them is appearance. The first one is confidence, and the second one is enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And they often go together. There is nothing more attractive than enthusiasm. And on the masculine side of things, there's nothing more attractive than confidence and self-confidence.
No, feminine side as well. Thank you very much.
There's crossover there. Obviously, men want to see self-confidence, and women want to see enthusiasm.
Right. Well, that feeds. I mean, it's basically, what is it? What's the word? It's the energy that feeds off of each other. There's another word for that. Anyway, yeah, it's yeah.
I don't have a single word or concept. I know what you're talking about. I understand that they build on each other.
Yes.
And that's a good thing. But yes, there is nothing more attractive than efficaciousness, and that is expressed as confidence and enthusiasm. So, yes, absolutely agree with that. Just looking in the chat here, make sure before I start getting into the wrap-up here, how did it get to be 5 minutes to the hour? Well, the show is called 5 minutes. So there's a few other good ones here in the chat. I'll be reading all of this later. I just haven't... what would I do? What would I do? Marius, that's brilliant. I don't know if you got that from listening to this show, but I actually I've used it as a Post-it note before. Post-it note of the week, WWID, which is, what would I do?
Yes.
And the great thing about asking yourself, you obviously know this already, but the great thing about asking yourself, what would I do, is not only, as I mentioned, it's a brainstem, it gives you creative ideas, but it also lets you say, well, what would the best version of me do? What would the me that I want to be do? Let me do that. Love that. Love that. What would I do? That's outstanding.
Enric on YouTube, he says, my significant act of courage was breaking for reason, from a pseudo-cult called EST.
Yes.
EST. I know, that's horrible horrible cult is what that is.
Breaking out of a cult is no mean feat.
What is it? Executive something. I forget what it's called. It was supposed to be like, self-empowering and all of this stuff. It was such a cult.
Oh, it was like Dianetics without Ron Hubbard. It was
exactly,
just
there was
higher levels of your own inner... Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. The kernel of truth in that is that, of course, all of us are capable of much more than we're achieving in this moment, and we just need to connect to those higher aspirations, and on and on and on. And also, if you take a course on that, then we can get you there. That's going to cost some money.
Once
you finish that course, there's 8 other courses after that.
It was Erhard seminars training.
Yeah, Erhard. Yes,
Blowhard.
Werner Erhard. Blowhard Erhard. Yes, that's right. A couple things in the show notes that I didn't get to, but I'll mention just so when you see them in the notes, you'll know what they're about. There is a website out there for those of you who are fans of objectivism, fans of Ayn Rand. I know a lot of the people who listen to our show are. Just about everybody who listens to our Thursday show is. Objectivistmedia.com. This is great. And it's funny, too, because I don't always remember that it's out there. And then Steve Rogers, the man behind the site, will remind me. If you go to objectivistmedia.com, you will find listed there everything that Amy and I have ever done publicly associated with this philosophy.
There is a wonderful man out there named Steve who he's like the objectivist scholar of objectivist activity. He puts everything into a website source, and he lists everything that.
It's very cool. It's very cool. Now this Sunday show, this is not an objectivist show.
Yeah.
And it's a show with a couple of objectivists. We talk about Ayn Rand a lot and stuff, but this is not on there. It's not on. But our Thursday shows are all on there.
Right.
All wherever we're at, 38 of them.
Including some of our Great Lakes Objectivist Conference.
Some of our GlowCon stuff is on there.
Yeah, our GlowCon stuff. I couldn't believe it. I'm like,
so you could, for example, you could listen to Amy's talk on dealing with death and grief.
Death. Actually.
And there's actually the link to it on YouTube is out there. There are links to everything that he puts out there. If it exists on the internet, there's a link to where it is. And if it's not available, you won't see that link, so you won't have to waste your time looking for it. Very cool. Objectivistmedia.com.
Yeah,
link is in the show notes.
And by the way, Jim, if you think that was a bummer mentioning, your dear pet.
No.
No.
Great value.
I cover it all in my. You can look it up. I think it's on your channel. Robert Nasir, the YouTube channel.
Link is in the show notes.
Yeah, where I talk about death and how to prepare for it. Ooh.
Amy talks about good grief.
Yes.
Because grief is important. Grief has a job to do.
Very important.
We did our episode on emotions.
About.
I made that point. Your emotions have a job to do. There is work that your emotions need to do, and you need to let them do that work before you then let them go. Otherwise, you're just repressing. And your emotions are valuable. They are crucial. Even your negative emotions, you Pink Floyd fans, have a role to play. They are really, really important. Now, I have a post-it note for the week. I don't have any homework for the week, so I'm going to continue working on my list of habits and routines and what we're doing to make 2022 super, super effective. So I'm not going to give you any homework this week. I'm not going to give myself any homework this week. Mostly we're just getting ready for the trip to London. Coming up at the end of the month, if that affects our show schedules, we will let you know. The big celebration this week was Amy found her passport. Somehow it had hidden. It had gotten hidden. It got mischievous on us and hid itself away. So yes, we are definitely going to be in London end of the month. Anybody who's coming to London for either the ARC UK events or the ARI student conference events, we're going to be there. We're going to have a good time. I don't know if we'll have any musical instruments. I'd like to rock out while we're there, but either way, it's going to be an awesome time. And with that said, hey, show notes will be posted right after the show. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you will see links to all of the interesting, fun, and even quirky things that we talked about, all of the birthdays, including Michelangelo and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. You will find information on the real Cyrano de Bergerac and the end of Napster and White Day and Black Day and the Analytic Synthetic Dichotomy show, all of it. Show notes.
And
right after the show.
And my death talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to find more of our other stuff, go to robertnasir.com. You'll find a link to the Facebook group where you can give us suggestions for future episodes. You will find links to our Patreon and PayPal links, where some of you already support the show. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate that, but we'll try. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. We love you for that. Outstanding. PayPal, if you only want to make a one-time contribution, that's super cool. Patreon, if you want to give a monthly contribution. And again, magnificent. If you have any comments or questions, any suggestions, we would love to know what you would like year 3. I can't believe it's been 2 years. What you would like year 3 of this show? What makes it worth listening to? Hang out with us on a Sunday night. Good fun, but I'd like to see a little bit more of whatever it is. You let us know. And with that said, we wish you success. We wish you flourishing. We wish you all the things we always wish you. And the one thing that we always wish you, but I think this week we're going to send out a little bit extra using those vibes, those waves, those, what do they call it these days? Frequencies. We're going to send it out on the right frequency. As always, we wish you love.